Welcome, folks. You're listening to Race Matters. I am the host, Eddie Carson, and we are here at Joppa Radio 96.3, Newburyport, Massachusetts. And I'm happy because it's February, and we all know what February means. That's right. February is akin to January when we know that Brother King's birthday is coming up, or holiday anyway. And for some folks, that brings about a great deal of excitement. They're curious. They want to know a little bit more. And for others, it's just another day or just another month, much like Black History Month is to others. But I think there's something to be said about Black History Month really encompassing the narrative for all folks who are here and everything too. So it is my hope today to kind of delve into a little bit as we think about Black History Month. And I hope I can use this to inform and to educate you on the significance of Black History Month, which traces its origins to the efforts of Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He's known as the father of Black history. In the year 1926, along with the Association of the Study of Negro Life and History, established by Negro History Week, Carter Woodson drove forth this notion of a Black History Month. But it started not as a Black History Month initially, but as a Black History Week. And this week was strategically chosen. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Strategically chosen to coincide with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, two figures who played a significant role in the fight against slavery and, of course, for civil rights. Woodson's vision was clear. He believed that understanding Black history was essential to understanding the history of America as a whole. There are folks such as me and other people who would oftentimes really sit there and think about the fact that there is no United States without Black people. Now, let me say that again, just in case you didn't hear me. There is no United States of America without Black people. And we think about the ways in which the labor has been put on the backs of Black people, my ancestors, for a long period of time, really brings this obvious element to a concise conclusion that's here. Over time, that week-long celebration kind of started to gain a little bit momentum, and it expanded to be more than that. Now, especially by the time we get to the 1960s, that was during the height of the civil rights movement. And during this period, right, a lot of campuses are starting to expand their own notions of what does it mean to be inclusive after being exclusive for a long period of time. We start to see, for example, by 68, 69, especially after the death of Martin Luther King, a lot of campuses start to add African American Studies departments to really study the condition and the underlying elements that drives this notion of what does it mean to be Black in America. By the time we get to 1976, Gerald Ford recognized Black History Month as an official month. One of the things that he did is that he urged Americans to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black people in every area or every endeavor throughout our history. And that's saying quite a bit, particularly for the fact that a lot of things Black people have aimed to achieve historically have been kind of swept under the rug a little bit. A lot of inventions, texts, things that were created and written by Black people oftentimes were usurped by white people, taken, their names were assigned to it, and the inventions and the work of Black people became a lost memory. Every single day, folks, I kid you not, every single day, I learned something new about an idea or an invention or a concept that was emerged by a Black person. Had no idea whatsoever. And so while those things are really great when we start to think about Black History Month, you know, there's some folks that that lean into skepticism. When we think about this, you know, they talk about Black History Month in ways in which there are diverse opinions on that. While many see it as an essential time to honor the contributions and the history of the great work that I believe I'm doing, because I believe that I'm creating and making Black history every single day, and this is true of other Black individuals, there are some folks who express criticism or just flat out opposition to his existence. Um, you know, I get the whole idea that we want to foster dialogue and we want to offer multiple opinions and perspectives on these things. But yet, to further the silence of the great work that Black people have done within these criticism is problematic. Some critics of Black History Month argue that it creates division rather than unity. How many times have we heard that before? And that seems to be the case all too often, especially when we're talking about things that deal with identity. Identity along the color line. And there tends to be a difference, particularly when we're talking about issues of gender, and gender in terms of the binary, right? To go beyond the binary, be a little inclusive, and we know the pushback that exists there too. But the claim that, well, we should focus on being American, they'll argue that there's this sense of unintentional segregation through the narrative of history. And we've seen that pushback over the years, especially when it's come to things such as an episode I did earlier on AP African American Studies and why offering such a course is really important. We've seen some states curtail their DEI programs and eliminate gender study program, but also those who are really looking to work away from such studies as African American studies. Those things really kind of drive this hostility and frustration among folks. The big one, of course, too, is the belief that we've reached a post-racial society, right? Why have Black History Month that's rooted in the belief that we live in a post-racial society, one where race supposedly no longer plays a significant role in opportunities or treatment, or what does it mean to be fair? From this perspective, dedicating a month to Black history seems like unnecessary or even somewhat counterproductive, because what it does is it moves race into the conversation, and we should be moving race out of the conversation. And we know that that is just not a reality. Some people feel excluded. I give Black History Month talks quite a bit. I gave a little notion and mention to it after my head of school in our school meeting today to students. And I oftentimes sit there as I listen to my head of school say some wonderful words about why folks should lean into this. I sat there and thought, I wonder if there are folks who question the validity of Black History Month. Where's my history? And yet, I think part of it is understanding that Black history is tied to the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, Jane Crow, aspects of apartheid America that's there, and all the other things that are problematic. And it's at this point here in a second, I'll really delve in a little bit more specifically to point out really with all this static greatness, why we should really be excited about Black history. I think another reason why some people have some reservations when it comes to Black History Month is, and I really do believe this, folks, I think is that people just misunderstand the purpose of Black history. I do. And again, that's my opinion here, but that's kind of where I'm leaning. I believe a significant portion of the criticism stems from a misunderstanding of Black history as a way of bringing life and history to the present, to the struggles of a people, right? Some people, they mistakenly believe it's about elevating one group above others. That is not the case. That's not the case. And for Black folks, oftentimes, We're just fighting just to get to the same starting line as other people. Some people believe it's about correcting historical omissions of Black stories. And while some people may hold that to be the case, it's hard to encapsulate that in Black history or during Black History Month. But there is some truth, right? As we think about really the challenges of how we've taught history and we've taught the dynamics of Black people and race. A previous episode I did titled The Color of Law. We delved in and we explored really the mistakes made in history textbooks as it relates to segregation, particularly de jure and de facto segregation here in this country. And let's just be honest, the other big aspect here, right, is the ideological differences. Some see Black History Month as a product of identity politics. I don't think there's anything wrong, folks, with identity politics. I mean, it was identity politics that drove the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, that allowed women to, you know, gain a franchise, to continue to fight for their rights and the things they need. So identity does play a role here. They might, see it as a symbol of political correctness. That's a word that always kind of creeps up to the surface from time to time, but yet it really becomes part of this broader cultural agenda by which people disagree with. Let's just not talk about this. Part of Donald Trump's recent executive orders is to start to phase out things dealing with cultural roots and identity, which is frightening, such as Black History Month, right? People continue to celebrate this. We would never in a million years say, oh, you know, come March, we shouldn't celebrate the Irish and their struggles and what's taking place, right? I mean, I'm like anyone else. I like going out and having green beer and really leaning in and thinking about the history and the struggles of people. I think it makes us better. It informs who we are, and it really drives out the ignorance of society more than anything. You know, Black History Month holds deep significance, serving, lots of reasons, purposes, whether it's contemporary, whether it's historical, or better yet, whether it's a forecast for the future, as we try to illustrate to young people of all races the great accomplishments that people who look like me have made and they've contributed to. First and foremost, it's time to acknowledge and honor the immense contributions of Black individuals who shape the landscape of this country. People such as the Harriet Tubmans, which I'm still waiting to see her on a $20 bill. I was excited at one point. I'm not as hopeful as I once was over that. W.E.B. Du Bois. I was recently telling my wife that I think I know why people struggle with Du Bois. It's because they can't get past this one segment, this one period of Du Bois, and they don't understand the dynamics of much of his life. And I'm going to introduce you to some of that here in a second. Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, you know, lots of other folks we can continue to name countless and countless times over and over and over. I think it's important that we honor and we celebrate them, because by honoring and celebrating people of the past, we're honoring ourselves. I'm honoring my mother and my father. I'm honoring my grandparents and my great grandparents, my aunt and uncles. All of those folks I am honoring in a way in which I can look myself in the mirror and I can see myself and I can feel proud about not only the gains and accomplishments that people before me have made, but because of those gains and accomplishments, I can look in a mirror and I can say, I am who I am where I am, and I've had the level of success that I've had because of those folks. And I can feel good about doing that. It's about understanding the resilience and strength of Black communities and in face of systemic oppression, and recognizing that ongoing struggles against racial injustices will continue, and they do. And some of that, though, offers us this lens of hopefulness about the future. One of the things that drives Black History Month, particularly of recent, is this notion of Afrofuturism. And I'll give you a story about W.B. Du Bois as it relates to Afrofuturism in a way that a lot of people don't really know. We know him as the founder or co-founder, I should say, of the NAACP, the brilliant scholar who's authored tons and tons of academic books, the author of the Philadelphia Negro, for example. But folks forget about the fiction that he engaged in. And a lot of his fictional work offered a campaign for hope and a sense of being optimistic for the future. So here, let me highlight a lesser known yet profoundly impactful work by W.E.B. Du Bois. It's titled The Comet. The Comet was written in 1920, 1920, 1921, around that time. And as part of his collection, Darkwater, Voices from Within the Veil, the Comet is an early example of Afrofuturism, a culturally aesthetic work that combines elements of science fiction, historical fiction, and fantasy to explore the African American experience and envision alternative futures, hopeful futures, a way by which there is a sense of social progress that's there, ways in which Black people can look forward while looking in the past and celebrating what's to come. And that is what Brother Du Bois was aiming to get at. The Comet, it tells the story of Jim Davis. Jim Davis was a Black man who worked in a basement of a New York bank. And it's a cool story, folks. One day, a comet passes close to Earth, releasing toxic gases that would kill nearly everyone in the city of New York. And so when Jim emerges from the basement, he finds in the streets empty, except for one other survivor, right? So Jim, he's a Black man who was working down there, and the other survivor was a wealthy white woman named Julia. Together, they had to navigate this new world, this brave new world, grappling with themes of race, class, and survival. And it's just a phenomenal story. As Du Bois explores what happens when societal structures collapse, leaving only, and I think this is the key thing to keep in mind, right? Those structures in society, they collapse. And when all of those things are gone, it leaves our raw humanity, the raw humanity of Jim and Julia. Jim, a Black man, Julia, a wealthy white woman, two people from two different worlds who would never have come together at any other time, and yet they're stuck now by circumstance. Jim and Julia. So they were forced to confront their preconceived notions of prejudice, revealing with the potential for unity and other deep-seated divisions that persisted even in the face of catastrophe, right? I mean, it's just them, and yet there's still this perception they have about each other just because of the color line. The story challenges us to imagine a world where racial barriers are just dismantled. Let's just get rid of them. Not by choice, but by necessity. Even to consider the possibilities of a future shaped by equality and it's just mutual love, respect, a lot of radical love here. All of those things that are going to really kind of drive these things that are there. And as we think about a story like that, some folks may pause and say, well, Eddie, we have that. That is the United States here in 2025. We have that world. We've dismantled all of these barriers and all of these structures, and we have these things. But that's not true. We haven't dismantled those things. Those elements still continue to persist, and we have to push back and challenge the persistence of those things in a way that allows us to look at the book, The Comet, and to relate to Jim and Julia, and to think about what is it like to sit with someone opposite of you, absent of the biases that we've been conditioned to think about in those ways. The Comet is a it's significant not only because of the narrative, the storyline, but also because of its place in a broader, I would say historical context of Afrofuturism, of Black history, of Black studies, of interracialness. Long before, you know, long before we term Black History Month, right? Because that didn't come to fruition until 1926 by Carter G. Woodson. Du Bois was already thinking about this future that challenged the status quo and that centered Black experiences at the forefront. You Du Bois's work, just really thinking about a lot of the great thinkers of understanding the aestheticness and the beauty of Black people, all too much there. Right. And then again, and we think about that and think about that story of Du Bois, and we think about Black aesthetics. I think that's what Black History Month is about. It is about the aesthetics. The aesthetics of Black History Month are they're rich, varied, right? Reflecting the diversity and the vibrance of Black people, Black culture. All Black people are not the same. That would not be fun. We don't think the same. But yet we oftentimes congregate around common struggles. And those common struggles forces us to look back to the past to celebrate Black history today, right? From things such as the arts, music, literature, fashion, sports. We can go on and on and on. Think about all the great accomplishments of Black people. And this is what we have. We have the aesthetics of Blackness that's there, right? I mean, when I think about visual arts, for example, I think about the works of 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 of, of Faith Ringgold or Jacob Lawrence, who really encapsulated our triumph in the trials and tribulation of Black experiences, or Jean Basquiat, or Carol Walker, for example, just a few people off the top of my head who use their artistic mediums to tell powerful stories about, who we are as a people, but also the work of resistance and empowerment too. And I think these are the reasons why it's important that, during a month like February, we are invading the museums, the art galleries, the opera houses, the lecture halls. We are engaging in the theater and watching great Black folks showcase their talent on stage, right? I mean, last night, and I need to give a quick shout out to Beyonce for her Grammy nomination in the category of country music, right? I was telling some folks earlier today that, the sense that Black people don't lean in and listen to Black, or not Black music, but country music, that's not true. And true, there have been some hostile actions from the country music industry over the years, but I've also seen some beauty come out of country music where they've just really said, we're going to try to crush this image, this sense of what people perceive us to be, to embrace the diversity of the world, particularly for the fact that Black people have been doing country music for a long, long, long time, right? I'm a jazz person, blues, for example. I should listen to a lot more gospel. You think I would, but then I can say the same thing about hip hop, or, and I'll listen and lean into some R&B too, as I think about the greatness of these cultural movements, right? Again, another shout out to Kendrick Lamar and his wonderful awards at the Grammys, right? There's just a whole good celebration that's there as we think about these things that take us from the rhythms and the lyrics of sorrow to the showcases and the joys of the Black experience, the things that really define the ways in which Black people have really championed the contemporary aspect of societal norms and values. We are cementing our place here. And that is what we're looking to do, right? Let's think about some other folks too. And then I challenge you. Who are the authors you're reading right now? I mean, dedicate your month to doing that, right? Maybe picking up the works of Langston Hughes or Zora Neale Hurston or oh, my favorite brother, that awesome gay brother by the name of James Baldwin, or the wonderfulness of Toni Morrison, as we think about just a few folks that are there, the Richard Wrights of the world. My favorite literary writer being that of Ralph Ellison. And he's simply amazing, right? Let's lean into these works and these really, this good funk that's there. You know, like attend a poetry slam, go to a book reading, okay? Beyond some of the other elements in which people are celebrating Black people. And I think that becomes the thing that is all also important as we do this stuff too. And I'll tell you a category that I know very little about when it comes to the greatness of Black people, and that is probably on fashion and style. I mean, I don't know, I'm a soul brother. I'll stick to my blazer and my bow tie. Whether that means I have style or no style, that's not for me to judge. But what is for me to judge is I do know that there are folks out there, Black folks out there, creating industries that are entrepreneurial and are doing amazing things in the namesake of the Black experience, Black identity. You know, as we think about Black History Month, and I'll be saying a little bit more on future episodes and everything too, I think it's also necessary that we find our our mentors, right? Doesn't matter who you are. For me, this is not going to be much of a surprise. Intellectually, Frederick Douglass is one of my mentors. W.E.B. Du Bois is another. Maya Angelou, right? These are folks intellectually that I've gravitated towards, I've learned a lot from. And these are Black people that I want to feel that experience. But, it extends beyond just really these intellectual thinkers who are there too. Yeah, this goes into the profoundness of people who cast memories in our minds. For me, growing up and listening to my mama listen to Marvin Gaye and learning more and more about Marvin Gaye over the years as I've listened to his stuff, collected his vinyls, really started to understand what he was trying to do at a particular time. Or Herbie Hancock, right? We can find those people. For white folks, nothing wrong with having a Black mentor. I have white mentors too. James Reeb, that soul brother who went to Selma, Alabama in 1965 to die for the souls of Black folks. That is what he did. He is someone that I bring up in tons of my talks and I illustrate to my students in classes, recognizing the fact that this is a white brother who would invite me into his home to break bread. The Dietrich Bonhoeffers, who studied at Union Theological Seminary for a period of time and then traveled back to Germany with that knowledge of radical love and what does it mean to embrace differences and stuff, to arm himself against the white supremacy of the rise of Nazism and Adolf Hitler. All of these folks encompass what I'm going to call Black History Month. Some folks may say, a white jazz brother like Bill Evans, he's got that Black funk, he's part of it too. I would say absolutely. I'll tell you another one that I like. John Cougar Mellencamp. I had for a second, just a little second, I was gonna like kind of try to, you know, kind of sing a little line of Cherry Bomb for a second. Then I caught myself. Oh, that's right. Just because if I was to roll out some lyrics there, I don't know, y'all may be closing the internet down, turning your radio off, and saying, "Oh, Eddie, that brother, he's got some soul," but it is not musically. It doesn't matter because I got my ancestors and a lot of other wonderful Black folks who've done great things to make this Black experience everything it's supposed to be. Folks, thank you for chiming in here at WJOP LP Chopper Radio. This is 96.3. I'm Eddie Carson, the host of Race Matters, and you're leaning into the funk. As we celebrate Black History Month, don't let anyone tell you that this is a month that shouldn't be celebrated. It's a month, especially for Black folks, but it's an inclusive month for all people. Thank you, my friends. Be well until next time.